Hey now guys, it's Knockout21. How are y'all doing today? This upcoming September 9th is going to be the Dreamcast 20th anniversary. And I wanted to do this big elaborate video, but I'm short on time and stuff. So basically gonna go ahead and talk about what the Dreamcast means to me and show off a couple of games that I really enjoyed on the system. The first time I ever knew about the Dreamcast was about a year prior. This local mom and pop game store that specialized in imports actually had a unit, and it had on display showing off, I believe, Sonic Adventure and some other game. And I thought, like, wow, this looks great. I wanted to rent one, but my dad told me otherwise. No, why would you rent something if you're just gonna give it back? I was a little mad at him for that for a while, but I got over it. During the summer of '99, I've actually saved up some money and been wanting to buy one on day one. However, I bought a Game Boy Color, thinking I was able to afford both the Game Boy Color and the Dreamcast. However, that was not the case. I actually had to buy my Dreamcast about 6, 7 months down the line. But regardless, I did eventually get my Dreamcast. I had so many great games. My brother let me borrow a couple. I bought a couple myself, and I truly enjoy it. To me, the Dreamcast would have to be the best video game console of all time. It experimented a lot with different kinds of gameplay. There's tons of fighters. There's even more fighters, and had RPGs that were very unique. I just loved it. When I think about the Dreamcast, I have nothing but fond memories about it. You know, going to a friend's house, playing Power Stone, having them come over here, playing King of Fighters or Street Fighter 3, and or going solo on Sonic Adventure 2. I remember dedicating the summer of 2001 specifically to unlock every emblem just to get a hold of Green Hill Zone. And when I did it, I felt really fulfilled, like I actually did something that was awesome. But as time went on, Sega discontinued Dreamcast. I didn't like that they did that. It hurt a lot. I will have to really admit that when Sega got out of the hardware business, it really hurt me right here, you know. But I understand why they did it. You know, they couldn't survive otherwise. You know, regardless, they're still around, and I still have fond memories of the Dreamcast, and I connect it from time to time, you know, just to play around. Either way, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a couple of videos of some games I really like, and games I could continue to play. And I believe I totally recommend these if you plan to, you know, expand your Dreamcast collection. Anyway, let's go on to the next clip. Okay, guys, I'm gonna start off by apologizing for the last one. I sounded kind of dead. It was really late at night, and like I said before, I didn't really have time to record this stuff. Regardless, I'm gonna go ahead and continue on here and pretend that didn't happen. Even though I'm gonna upload it, and it's gonna be shared on the internet for the world to see my mundane voice and whatnot. Regardless, let's go ahead and talk about Sonic Adventure here. This is one of the first games I played on the Dreamcast. Truly enjoyed it. A lot of people didn't like how Sonic became 3D, and this is one of the games. It changed Sonic's look, I guess you could say, and a lot of people didn't care for it. I didn't really mind it too much. It was one of the few 3D games I actually enjoyed back in the day. There was a bit of exploration, a lot of stuff to do, and a lot of different play styles, which was not seen in a lot of 3D platformers back in the day. And I truly enjoyed it. The controls and the cameras could get kind of janky, but I didn't give Sonic Team too much shade over that. It was like the first 3D Sonic game, and I thought, you know, the next one will be better. And yeah, I truly enjoyed it. The whole perfect chaos monster, everything, the whole lore, truly truly like this game. And for those of you who like don't have this on Dreamcast, you can also buy this on the GameCube or download it on the PS3 or Xbox 360. It's I guess I gotta say it's worth a go. Totally like this game. Okay, and here we have Sonic Adventure 2. Now, this game is bittersweet. I bought this game day one, and I truly loved it. But in the middle of playing it, that's when I got the news that Sega was discontinuing the Dreamcast. So yeah, it's kind of weird messing up there, but it's kind of weird seeing that, and you know it kind of kind of hurts. Like I always associate this game with the Dreamcast discontinuing announcement. It came as a shock, and it's still kind of like, I don't know why, but it's still kind of like hurts a little bit. Maybe it's a sense of nostalgia, like thinking like, oh, it could have been better or whatnot. And I find it kind of strange because every time I talk to people about the Dreamcast, they say, oh, I remember playing this at a friend's house, or playing this and playing that. And I'm like, well, did he ever get one? Like, did he ever buy one? Or, oh no, well, I was waiting for the PlayStation 2. Like people knew the PlayStation 2 was coming, but decided, yeah, let's forego the Dreamcast. A game that's here right now, or a system that's here right now, and let me just wait for the PlayStation 2. And I was really bitter towards the PS2 for like a really long time. I don't think I got one until maybe until 2004, like 4 years after. I think around 2004 is when I got my first PlayStation 2. And it was mostly because of this, because, I personally believe that the PlayStation beat the Dreamcast on name alone. And, and I always thought, it sucks. It sucks that it lost because of a name alone. Now you probably say, oh, but the PlayStation had so many more games. No, like, you gotta look at it this way. When the PlayStation 2 was first launched, there were no games out there. There were no good games. Maybe a Madden 2000 or 2001, and then that was it. I was like, I can't believe like no one's buying. Like, I'm thinking like, there's Third Strike. There's all these badass games on the Dreamcast, and no one wants to play them because they're waiting for the PlayStation. Therefore, the PlayStation 2 won because of name alone. And I really thought that. Of course, there were other reasons why Sega got out of the console market, but yeah. Regardless, let's finish talking about my rant and talk about this right here. As you can see, I just finished Green Hill Zone. That took me nearly an entire summer to collect enough emblems to unlock this level. As you can see through the grades thing, I got A on everything I needed to get an A on in order to unlock everything. Chow World 100%. I had to raise my Chow on the VMU, which meant I had to buy 25 batteries multiple times just to raise my Chow on the go, because that's how dedicated I was. And eventually I got my Chow strong enough to beat to get A's on all the Chow events. And here's one of my favorite levels of all time. City Escape. And and every time I play this game, I'm always taken back to like that summer of 2001, where I spent a long time getting all the emblems, and I truly enjoyed unlocking everything, seeing what the game had to offer. And you just don't see something like that in games today. It's always like one thing or another where you gotta pay. You gotta pay for unlockables. You gotta pay for certain things, and it's not the case like that, anymore. It's just like, give us a little bit of money. But Sonic Adventure didn't do that. There's various paths to explore, uh, things to unlock. You can always revisit stages after you unlock certain power ups and stuff, and it makes the game very, very deep in that sense. It's a game I don't go back to all that often because I have it on like two more different consoles. I also have this on the Xbox 360 and on the GameCube. And if they ever release it again, like on the Xbox One, or make a 4K version of this, then I'm probably gonna end up buying it again because that's how much I love this game. Still, it is one of the few games I actually bought for myself. Most of the games you see here are from someone else's collection, but I enjoyed them all through and through. Anyway, let's go on to the next game. Jack Ryan Radio. Horrible impersonation of Professor K, but it's the best I got. This is an awesome game. One of my top favorite games on the Dreamcast. Bought on the 360 to play it again. However, for some reason, the audio on that one kept on skipping. But that's besides the point. Jack Ryan Radio was one of these unique titles that I totally loved on the Dreamcast. It had this really weird Tokyo, futuristic feel, and I totally loved it. It took me a while to get used to the game because, coming from Tony Hawk, where things are a little bit more, stiff, this game felt a lot more loose in comparison to that. So grinding and whatnot required a little time to get used to and whatnot, but still an awesome game. I totally love the music. Miller Ball Breakers from David Soul would be my most favorite song out of the whole, Jack Ryan Radio audio album. I actually looked for a while for that particular CD and ended up finding it at some import store, only to find out that it cost around $40 to buy. In comparison to just paying $12.99 for a regular CD back then, I thought, you know what, I would rather just go ahead and wait for a download or something. But regardless, the music's still awesome. One of the first times I actually heard Rob Zombie on a video game album too. For those of you who don't know, the U.S. version got an additional level and an additional tracks, audio tracks to go along with it. And I thought it was pretty cool. As you can see, I'm using, forgot her name, Cube. I'm using Cube here. She's an American goth chick that knows how to skate and tag, which is kind of weird because I don't think there's goth chicks that do that. But yeah, that goes to show you that these characters are very unique. Had a badass atmosphere that I don't think could be replicated by anyone other than developers who live in Japan. Now, I know there have been attempts to resurrect this series, like on the Wii. However, I don't think it should be done by anyone other than people at Sega who are familiar with the area where this game takes place. However, if they make maybe one equivalent to, to like, I don't know, if they made one in the U.S. made by people in the U.S. and yeah, maybe I guess I could see that happening. But now for me, Jet Grunt Radio or Jet Set Radio has to be taking place in Tokyo. Has to have that Tokyo Shibuya feel to it. Still great game. I do recommend it for anyone's Dreamcast collection. Anyway, let's go on to the next video. Spawn and Demon's Hand. It's a badass game. I totally loved it. However, when I look at this game, this is basically an arcade boss rush kind of game. You go around, you collect weapons, and you basically attack the boss. Uh, there's a lot, there's multiple types of characters. Characters are better with swords, others better with guns or projectiles, things of that nature. And the main idea of the game is just to play through the whole boss rush up until you get to the last guy of the game, I can never pronounce his name right. Malabolgia or something. Regardless, still a badass game. I was a big Spawn fan back in the day. And even to this day, I still read up on the comics. Spawn 300 recently was released. And this game in general was a game I played a lot with my friends. I remember playing hours and hours and hours trying to unlock every single character in the game, from like the lowliest skeleton up until like some of the mid bosses and bosses that they could play as. Unfortunately, when it comes to like depth, there's not much to it. After you unlock everything, you do get an ending credit kind of thing, like a little snippet of the comic and a bit of an explanation, but really there's not much there to it. It is just an arcade game brought over to the home. What would have made this game great is if they included some sort of online element. SegaNet was still pretty active during that time, and if it had maybe an online element, it could appeal to a lot more people. But that's besides the point. It's still an awesome game. Not too much there, but still fun if you're playing with friends and whatnot. Okay, now this is not me trying to show off that I have like this game. How I got this game was pretty straightforward. I got the second to last issue of the Dreamcast magazine, the one with the Phantasy Star characters on it. And in that issue, I saw that there was a sequel to Rival Schools. For those of you who don't know, Rival Schools was this quirky fighting game on the original PlayStation where a bunch of schools from all over Japan fight each other to be for one reason or another. And I totally loved that game. It had like a lot of personality, a lot of character, and I was really eagerly waiting for a sequel. So when I saw this game was about to come out on the Dreamcast, Project Justice, I called my local mom and pop game store and asked if they were going to have any copies. They said, yeah, we are going to have some copies and so days. Do you want me to hold you one? I said, yeah. So I basically bought it day one. And I totally loved it. Its gameplay is much more refined than the one on the PlayStation. It's a little tighter, a little bit easier to control. But this game in itself isn't very, very hard to play. There's not a lot to it. You just mix up your combos, do team ups, and it's a very enjoyable, experience. There's a lot of eye candy on this thing. However, I do have a little bit of a gripe. Now, in the original PlayStation, there was an arcade disc, where you could play, and the characters were actually voiced. In this, not so much. The only speaking roles they have is in the middle of the fights. And I really wish they would have, voiced those story elements, to kind of like give the characters a little bit more personality, like they did in, excuse me, like they did in the PlayStation version. Now, that's not to say that this game sucks because of it. No, far from it. It's a really awesome game. I had a lot of great times with it. Unlocking the characters was really fun because, the more you play, the more characters you unlock. You could unlock Power to Akira, unlock Burning Batsu, and that sort of thing. It's a totally awesome game. I totally recommend it for anyone that's a fan of fighting games, and any Dreamcast collector will be proud to have this game in the collection. However, it's fetching kind of, for close to $100 now, so it's one of those things you have to think about a little bit. Still an awesome game. Totally recommend it. Onward to the next video. Now, what you're looking at now is King of Fighters Evolution on the Sega Dreamcast. This is also King of Fighters 99 on any other platform, but yeah, this was the first King of Fighters game I've ever played. It basically introduced me to the franchise, and I totally love it. I never got a chance to experience any of the King of Fighters before this one. I did see them at the arcade and whatnot. However, I never really approached them because it just looked kind of alien to me. Like, do I really want to waste my quarter on something I might most likely lose on? You see, I do remember playing Fatal Fury, and Terry Bogard is in this. So is Joe. So is Joe Hagasashi and Ryo Sakazaki. Those are characters I'm familiar with, but I never really played them in a King of Fighter game. However, when I played this for the first time, I was really like amazed at how much character and how much a story is involved in a fighting game. Like, oh my god, there's all this relationship between these characters, these sort of rivalries, all this stuff, this secret organization. It was far more story than I was used to in a fighting game during that time. And I was like, wow, this is a totally badass game. I gotta get more into it. And that's when I realized that there's even more story to it, because something happened in a previous King of Fighters and stuff. And this was basically how I got into the series. Like, over time, whenever I would go visit my cousins down south, we would play this with King of Fighters, and it's basically something me and my family, my extended family, bonded over. We would talk about it, talk about strategy, how the mechanics work and whatnot. Some of it flew over my head because I wasn't quite familiar with it all that much, but I did get some of it. And seeing how weird and how different the combos came out in this, and how different the supers came out in it, made me like appreciate the look and the style that SNK was going for back in the day. Now let's continue this King of Fighter talk with another King of Fighters game, King of Fighters 2002, the Ultimate Match or something or other. I spent a lot of time on a training mode in this game. You see, this game was a lot deeper than most fighting games I played up until that point. And being able to cancel certain moves and link them to other special moves was pretty new to me. Like, oh my god, this is badass. Now, Street Fighter Alpha 3 had a similar thing with the Vism mechanic, but King of Fighters was something different. It had like special moves, hidden special moves, certain combos you could link to one another. And I got inspired by a lot of combo videos that I would see back in the day, and I was like, you know what? I gotta get this game. So I was actually pleasantly surprised that SNK would even release a game even after the Dreamcast was discontinued. This game I actually bought from my local mom and pop store using a bunch of change because I didn't have a job back then, and that was the only way I was able to pay for it. But yeah, that's what I did, and I played it, and I played every character thoroughly, see what I could, what combos I could exploit, what moves I could do, and I was totally engrossed in the game. Like, I was totally engrossed. I couldn't snap out of it. I was like in a zone. I remember spending about like 5 hours on Kyo trying to pull off this combo I saw online, only to do it once and never to do it again. And I was like, damn, that was badass. Let's see if I could do it again. I wasn't able to pull it off again, but still had a lot of fun. Ultimately, I took this game over to Mexico, where my cousins lived, and playing it there with them, and they had a blast. I remember bonding a lot with them with this game, and having a time of our lives. However, I was using game pads, and our arms freaking cramped up, but this is one of those games I have fond memories with. If not because of the training mode, but because I bonded with family basically. And here I am trying to pull the same thing off with Athena again and again. I remember spending like a good hour trying to get this. It's easier now in unlimited match, but back then you would have had to actually time every button press. And here I am looking at everything, trying to understand Japanese the best I could. And yeah, I'm actually trying to pull this off on a control pad, which is very, very difficult. I didn't have my arcade stick out, and there I am messing up again. But yeah, totally love this game. What's sad though is that shortly after this game, an Xbox and PS2 versions would be announced. I think about a year later, I think the PlayStation version was announced with more characters and stuff, and it bummed me out a little bit. But at that point, I was still angry at Sony for what they did to the Dreamcast. So it wasn't anything, I wasn't gonna buy it either way. Anyway, onward to the next one. Now, you guys are probably gonna say I'm making a big showcase of fighters in this video, and you're probably right. But that's the thing. The Dreamcast, like, really exposed me to like a lot of different fighting games in its day. I mean, a lot. Even in the mid 90s when the fighting games were going all out, I would always play like either one or two fighting games for like only a brief period. I wasn't all that great in Street Fighter 2, and Fatal Fury was fun, but that was it. And yeah, but the Dreamcast really, really opened my eyes to like the vast world of fighting games. There's so many fighting games on the Dreamcast, and the way I look at it, if the Capcom were to have its own game console in the late 90s, early 2000s, it would have to be the Dreamcast because of how many different games they released on this thing. Now, this would have to be one of my most favorite games from Capcom. Right here, Capcom versus SNK. It brought two fighting game worlds that I totally love into one game. Here we got the sexy Mai with her nice thick thighs and luscious boobs, and it's like, damn, this is a totally awesome game. If anything, because of that alone. But yeah, this game was like a dream come true for a lot of people. And especially me, who played a little Street Fighter and a little Fatal Fury back in the day. And seeing this now is like, wow, like they actually pulled it off. Now, I prefer this version over its sequel, mainly because of how it was presented. As you can see here, the intros and the levels are very unique and different. I wish they would have used higher res sprites for the game. But the backgrounds, the movement, everything, it gave it a certain sense of character that I don't think was found in its sequel, and it tried to do the best of both worlds. If we cut over to Geese's stage, you can see they used the same intro he had back in Fatal Fury, which definitely gives it that SNK flavor. And that's another thing I like. You just saw right now there was a bit of a intro between Bison and Geese. We're in a training mode right now, but yeah, they have rivalry with each other's counterparts. Kyo and Ryu have an exchange of words. Yuri and Sakura say some things. Mai and Chun-Li. That was really badass. Like, oh my god, these guys have this rivalry with each other. It's gonna be awesome. However, I was a little disappointed that there was a lack of a story. I was hoping that they could expand upon that and give it something different, give it something new. SVC Chaos, believe it or not, actually gave a little bit more effort into a story than Capcom's outings. But regardless, I look at this game, I remember having a lot of fun just seeing the matchups between these two characters. And playing with friends and whatnot, uh, getting used to it. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. So finally, here we have Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. I heard that this version of Third Strike wasn't exactly the most liked. I guess it was using an older hardware revision or something from the arcade, and it does certain things that most tournament players don't like. But I couldn't really tell from what I played. Maybe someone could like elaborate a little bit more in the comments section. But regardless, when I played this, the first time I played this was on the Dreamcast. During the time when this game was released on the Dreamcast, I wasn't anywhere near any arcades or had any way to get near one or get to one. So this was basically my only choice. I totally liked it. It was basically a continuation of Double Impact and Second Impact and stuff. And for the longest time, I always wondered when I'm going to be able to play a Street Fighter 3 as opposed to the many, many versions of Street Fighter 2 that have been released throughout the years and even continually being released throughout the years. Ultra Street Fighter 2, anyone? Still, I like this game mostly because it was very unique. I played this a lot with friends at work. Now, the thing you got to realize is that this version of Street Fighter 3 I played much later after it was released, after the Dreamcast was dead, and and no more games were being released for it. A couple of guys at work were into fighting games, and I said, "Oh, I got I have a Street Fighter Third Strike and whatever. Do you want to come my pad and play?" I said, "Yeah, whatever." One of the guys at work had this game on the PlayStation 2, and I went and I showed them my Dreamcast port. It's like, oh, they didn't know, whatever, and we would just play, each with our own arcade sticks, and we'd play it. And I had a pretty good time playing this game with some of the homies at work. And even to this day, I usually just play the Xbox 360 online version now. But from time to time, I like to pop this in because, well, I don't know, like, I just like to... I like to see a 240p version of Third Strike. Has this really weird, unique look to it. And I wish I could say more about this, but I remember enjoying it after the Dreamcast was gone basically, and it's one of those bittersweet things that I kind of point out to the guys. This is one of the discussions I had with the guys at work that the Dreamcast had all these great games, but for some reason it failed. I remember telling this guy, I'll call him Robert, that you play this on a PlayStation 2, you like all these fighting games, but the Dreamcast had it for a good solid 2 to 3 years. Before the PlayStation 2, you could have been practicing on the Dreamcast version, as opposed to waiting for a PlayStation version. And he was the one that would tell me, like, yeah, but I was waiting for the PlayStation 2. He was waiting for PlayStation 2. The Dreamcast had a lot more fighters than the PlayStation 2. They had all this stuff, and he was like, well, this and that, and there wasn't really anything there. And I really thought this guy was way into video games in general. I didn't think he would come up with an excuse why not to get a system. And he was also into fighting games. He was way into all the different Street Fighters and stuff. What if you're gonna play Third Strike? We're talking about Third Strike was not released on anything else. The Dreamcast was the only system that had this game, believe it or not. But he wouldn't buy it. Like he was aware that there was a version of it on the Dreamcast, but he will not buy it because well this and that and like, and it makes me frustrated. People say I'm repeating myself again, but people say they enjoy playing someone else's Dreamcast. They enjoyed this, they enjoyed that, they remember this, they remember that, but they didn't buy the damn system. And and it just really frustrated me that they would talk about that. And when I play this, when I think of the strike, I always think about the discussion I had with Robert. He would tell me this, and it just like I don't know. I don't know why I'm being frustrated over a discussion that we had, 15, 16 years ago, or that was 15 years ago. Either way, that was that. Third Strike, awesome game. However, finding a version on the Dreamcast can get pricey. If you guys have a PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360, I recommend getting it on those fast because at some point PSN and Xbox Live Arcade for those particular consoles are going to go away. So yeah, let me just go ahead and wrap this up. So there you have it, guys. The Sega Dreamcast. Man, playing those games really brought me back. I mean, it really, really did bring me back. Having so much fun with Capcom vs. SNK. I wanted to show you some Power Stone footage, but the guy I would borrow it from, he moved away, so I wasn't able to do that. But yeah, had great times. Just playing those games again. It was kind of bittersweet because they don't make them like that anymore. Pop in the disc and the game's just there. Everything's there. You could just unlock this, you could unlock that. No microtransactions, no this, no that. It was just there and it was yours. Oh, man. One of my biggest regrets was not being able to play the Dreamcast online. I really wanted to take Quake 3 online. I remember playing Quake 3 on the school computers. It was really choppy, but it was multiplayer and it was fun, and I wanted that fun to be at home. But I couldn't quite do it because I was still in high school and didn't have a job. So yeah. Yeah, it was one of my dreams to actually go ahead and play Quake 3 online with the Dreamcast, and it didn't come to fruition, and by the time I got a job, SegaNet was already dead and gone. But there's still ways to take your Dreamcast online. It's not like, it's impossible. You could buy something called Dream Live or DreamPie and take your Dreamcast online using, I think, fan servers and stuff. So it's not impossible. You can still do that. It just requires a little bit more effort. Still though, it is awesome. And anyone out there who watched this video and is still thinking about a Dreamcast, go look for one. It has a bunch of great games. Besides the ones you saw here on the computer or on the phone or wherever you saw this. Mars Matrix is a good game. Trigger Heart Exelica is another good game. Of course, those two are shooters. Grandia 2 is a great RPG. Skies of Arcadia is also a great RPG. Shenmue is an awesome immersive game. I guess you could call it a spiritual predecessor to the Yakuza series, maybe. Anyone that's a fighting game fan has a bunch of fighting games. If you don't like the Third Strike, at least get it for the, at least get it for the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 games. Get it for, Project Justice, the King of Fighter games. Garo Mark of the Wolves is also available on this game, on the system. However, I do have to warn you that playing that game on your Dreamcast does wear out a little bit. So be careful about that. But still, if you guys are interested, get a Dreamcast. It's awesome. It's been 20 years. There's like still a bunch of them out there that still work. Yeah. Anyway, this was Knockout 21. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. And like always, have a good one. Take care, you guys.